Be careful about the markets you choose. Be wise about them. Like, is the market large? Is it growing? Is it something that you have some type of edge in? Do you have any advantage? Look at yourself as whether you're an employee, a marketer, a consultant, a founder, however you identify, how can you improve your own traits, your abilities to execute, your coachability? Do you have anyone that you're around, whether you're in a mastermind group, an advisor, a boss, a former colleague, just anyone who is better at you than most of the things you do? And I have a handful of people, and each of them is way better than me at a particular skill. Let's say it's like sales or deal making. I'm just not very good at that.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Rob Walling with us. Rob has started 6 companies. He's written 4 books about entrepreneurship and invested in more than 190 startups. He's helped tens of thousands of startup founders through his podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us, which has shipped an episode every week since 2010. Rob, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So I know we have to do the obligatory origin story, but you have a superhero origin story. We got to get it out there for my audience to experience secondhand how you like went on that hero's journey. It's incredible what you've accomplished.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been quite a journey, and to be honest, I flash back to this moment 6 years ago when I was a construction worker, and it was raining and there was a backhoe and we were digging a ditch. I was literally digging a ditch. And I thought to myself, where did I go wrong? Like, what? This is not what I want to be doing with my life. And I'd gone to college and I was going to be kind of an electrical engineer or an electrician or, something in that field. That's what my dad worked in construction for 40 years. And my brother's in the trade. It was just the path I was going to take. And I was like, this is not for me. Like, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. And so I started going nights and weekends to the library to check out books on programming. I had learned how to code when I was a kid in the 80s, but I didn't really know you could make a living at it. It was just this whole kind of mysterious thing. And so the web was just coming around, and I was like, I'm going to learn PHP and Perl and HTML. And I did. And I wound up getting a job as a programmer at a .com company. It was a consulting firm that wrote code for .coms. That was the moment that I realized, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, I love tech and computers and software. I grew up in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, like the worldwide hub of tech. And nobody I knew was in tech. It was everybody was, a construction worker or a service worker or whatever. So that led me to writing a lot of software. I became a consultant, and I started realizing, do I want to be dollars for hours my entire life? And that was the next iteration about 4 or 5 years later of, I think I might be able to build software products that could make money while I sleep, to put it in quotes. No one else I knew was doing this. I mean, this is 2005, right? And this is like Basecamp either didn't exist or I'd never heard of them at that point. There was no, MailChimp was barely heard of. Salesforce was really the only SaaS, but I wasn't going to build Salesforce. I was one person working nights and weekends while I had a day job. Yeah. So ultimately, I started building products, and eventually it was within 3 years of that, probably 2008, I think, that I basically quit the day job. I had enough income. It's about $150,000 a year from products. I had several different products, and that was absolutely life-changing moment. The moment that I just said, no more consulting. I don't work for anyone ever again. And I just remember going to a Barnes & Noble. There was a coffee shop, and sitting there and drinking coffee and thinking, I don't have to do anything. Like, I have to maintain my stuff. But it was the first day, a non-vacation day of my entire adult life that I was like, I'm now in control.
Amazing. And what did you get as like the epiphany or lesson or insight as to taking that circuitous route, going through digging ditches, being a construction worker to get to where you were at? Because there's a gift in that. You could have just easily just walked into a startup at the beginning and skipped that whole thing, but it served you for whatever reason. I'm curious to hear what you see from that as the benefit.
Yeah, it really is an interesting question, isn't it? Because I don't know why I didn't just go work for a startup. It just never occurred to me that that would be, I didn't know anyone who worked for startups. Like I just didn't know that world. And so for me, it was like, how can I make money doing this? And then the next step is, how can I own what makes me money? You know what I mean? I want equity. I want to be building something for the long term. It killed me to even dollars for hours. I was, excuse me, at a certain point, I was charging 100, 125 an hour as a developer. So I was making like $200,000 a year as a 30-year-old, you know, and this is 20 years ago, right? So like, it was a lot of money. And yet I was super unhappy. And that really clicked with me. I mean, look, my first job, I made $4.50 an hour. Like my dad was a construction worker. My mom was a receptionist. Like for me to make $200,000 in, you know, whatever, 1999, or no, I guess it was later, 2004 money. It was just like, I had never seen that much money. And yet I was unhappy, because for me, it was, how do I build something that is a long-term asset? You know, and how do I find freedom? Really, I wanted three things. I wanted freedom to work on what I wanted and do interesting things, purpose, because I wanted to, you know, again, have something that's driving me that's super interesting, and relationships. That's the third one, which, you know, has always been why I've mostly bootstrapped. I've started 6 companies. 5 of them were bootstrapped, rather than, I never went and raised venture funding, because I didn't want to have to work the 70-hour-a-week treadmill as some folks do.
Yeah. So, but do you see that there was a value in that contrast of having the unhappiness, having the $4.50 an hour, and working your way into something that should have been fulfilling but still wasn't, so that you could appreciate what you have now? Or do you think that maybe that was unnecessary?
You know, probably was necessary for me.
I know, existential kind of question here.
It is. I wished it had been a lot easier. I wish it was easier for so many people who go down this path. You know, I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs over the past 20 years. And I don't know, the struggle's worth it a lot of the time, I think, because it makes you thankful. But some of those years of struggle, I wished I hadn't experienced. But it certainly makes me these days extremely, extremely grateful for anything that I have. And it taught me, here's the thing. I run 2 multi-million-dollar companies simultaneously. I write a book every 18 months. Like I do a bunch of, so someone might say, wow, you really put out a lot of stuff. The skills that I have to do that is all stuff I learned back then, of like being extremely efficient with my time because I had to be, of being extremely capital efficient because I had to be, of just pushing, persevering, of kind of generally having to work on the right things. Because if I didn't work on the right things, nothing happened. You know, there were these skills that it was really a baptism of fire, and I couldn't be successful without them. Those now allow me to level up to where I'm able to kind of, I think, live the professional life I want, where I do have freedom, but I also have purpose running these 2 companies, Microconf and Tiny Seed.
Yeah, well, startup founders are known as scrappy, resilient, hackers, kind of growth hackers and computer coding hackers and so forth, and always looking for ways to innovate and improvise and turn something from a thought into a thing with very little resource. That's pretty awesome. So it's a great skill set to have earned over those 20 some years.
Yeah. I do see some founders who raise a lot of money early, because that's the script, right? In my world of startups, it's like, don't you just create a business plan and then raise a bunch of money, or create an MVP and raise a bunch of money? And that shouldn't be the script. That should be the script for about 1% of companies. And I think another 9%, I have this 1-9-90 rule, I call it. 1% should probably raise venture. 9% of startups should probably raise some type of angel funding or independent funding. That's what my accelerator is, Tiny Seed. And about 90%, I think, should just bootstrap. And the mistake that I see some founders, especially young founders, is, or I shouldn't even, it's not an age thing, it's a experience thing, first time founders, is, well, I got to go raise a bunch of money. And then they raise a bunch of money. Oh, I have $500,000 or $1 million in the bank, but they don't have any skills to run a startup. And so they don't know what they're doing. They just burn through the money, and having too much money without the capital efficient mindset is a real problem. And I've seen founders, multiple founders, raise millions and just churn through it with nothing to show for it. So there's a danger there. But bootstrappers is exactly what you're talking about.
So mutual friend Rand Fishkin had a very difficult kind of trial by fire situation with his VC experience, and he wrote a book about it. And did you know that Rand and I co-authored the Art of SEO together. The first 2 editions he was a part of. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that. I have read it, and I have read his other book, Lost and Founder, for sure. He and I have known each other for several years. I'm invested in his company, and he just spoke at MicroConf a few months ago. So yeah, it's great. He definitely had a whole experience. Yeah, if folks are listening to this and haven't read Lost and Founder, and you want to hear kind of the inside trials and tribulations of raising venture and having it not go well, he's very transparent, and it's very well written. The story's well told. I highly recommend it on Audible or physical copy.
Yeah, and also we had an episode on my other podcast to talk about this. So I have a podcast about personal development, and yeah, he spoke about that experience, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes for this episode, because I think it's a really great episode. And of course, we've been talking about over multiple episodes on this show things like SEO and social media, and his amazing tool set for finding audiences and things like that, learning what they're interested in. Anyways, so I digress. He's awesome. I think it's an incredible I don't know, resilience builder, regardless of whether you take the money, if it's angel funding or it's VC money, or you bootstrap it and get really scrappy. Either way, you're going to learn some incredible lessons along the way. What would you say is the best lesson that you've gotten through either your own experiences or kind of vicariously living through some of your investments and those startup founders and what they've experienced, or perhaps somebody in your community, because I know you have a community of startup founders that you serve with your SaaS Launchpad and your podcast, Startups for the Rest of Us. So I'm curious to hear what pops in your mind.
Big lesson. Something I've been thinking a lot about lately is this idea of success, like in a startup. And I know that, the majority of your audience is not startup founders per se, but they are potential business owners, any type of venture that you're going to launch. And I've been looking at success factors because, again, I'm invested in almost 200 companies. So I'm involved with 300. It's a huge number, 300 founders. And I really do see that it's never, it's just the founder. That's what caused the success. It's not one factor. And it's never, some people say, it's the market. You got to pick a big market. And it's like, it's not just the market, because I see really strong markets, really strong idea and execution with a founder who just isn't coachable, doesn't execute well, doesn't do. So I've been really toying with this idea and talking about it lately of it's a multiplier of your founder times the market. And the market is like the whole market opportunity. There's a bunch, market is it's a text expander into a bunch of bullets, but you get the idea is that if the founder is coachable and they execute really well, they generally work on the right things and they get a lot of things done, that founder can pick a poor market that's small and not growing and has big incumbents, and they will just grind and not get very far. I'm not saying they won't be successful, but they'll have just minimal success. And flipping it, you have a founder who doesn't know what they're doing, and it's an amazing market, and they happen to hit it just at the right time, and they launched a crypto startup in 2016, or they launched AI in 2021. You know what I mean? And so you can have a 1 and a 10, and those multiply, and then you get a 10, or a 1 and a 10, you get a 10. But now if you have that great founder and you have this incredible market and a little bit of luck and timing, 10 times 10 is 100. And it's that big. It's a logarithmic difference. So someone listening to this is like, okay, I'm not a startup founder. Why does this matter? Well, a couple things. Be careful about the markets you choose. Be wise about them. Like, is the market large? Is it growing? Is it something that you have some type of edge in? Do you have any advantage? And number 2, look at yourself as whether you're an employee, a marketer, a consultant, a founder, however you identify, how can you improve your own traits, your abilities to execute, your coachability? Do you have anyone that you're around, whether you're in a mastermind group, an advisor, a boss, a former colleague, just anyone who is better at you than most of the things you do? And I have a handful of people, and each of them is way better than me at a particular skill. Let's say it's like sales or deal making. I'm just not very good at that. But my co-founder is, and I can go to him about a bunch of stuff. And then I have this other friend who's just really, really smart startup founder, deep thinker, very asks the right questions, and tends to make really good decisions. So when I have a very hard decision, I will go to him. and say, ask me the questions to get me to the, you know what I mean? So I have like, it's like it's not a board of advisory or whatever, but you get the idea. It's like, it's folks that are around me that are making me every day a better entrepreneur. And so that's what I'm going to leave your audience with, is it's like market times founder. How can you pick a good market, and how can you improve yourself as a founder or a marketer day after day?
Do you have situations where you've invested and the founder is not coachable, or the founder is not taking the correct path as you see it? And what do you do in that situation?
I give them my best advice, and I'm a minority. We are a minority owner. So I say, look, this is what I would do. I feel very strongly about this. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years, launched 6 companies. I've invested 190, and this is my advice to you. And if there are some founders who are really good and who take that advice and who do something slightly different. They factor it in. They at least integrate it with their own lens, and then they'll do a take on it. There are some founders who have made up their mind already what they're going to do, and they will ask me and other, I'd say, knowledgeable people. They'll ask another investor, an advisor, this and that, and we all weigh in, and then they go off and do the first thing they wanted to do anyways, right? So that's what you're talking about, is a complete lack of coachability. I don't know. For me, it's not like I'm not invested in one startup. If I was invested in one, or it was my co-founder, it would be a real problem, because I'd be like, you're going to kill this startup. Like, this is our whole thing. I have 191. So if they're going to make that choice, that's up to them. I can't make someone coachable who's not coachable. Yeah. I don't even try. We try not to fund people who aren't coachable, to be honest. And it's certainly a vast minority of founders I work with don't at least heed. Again, you don't have to do exactly what I say. I don't know everything. And I often couch that with, I'll say, like, I'm 80% certain of the advice I'm about to give you, that in your shoes, I would do this. Sometimes I'll say, look, I'm 50-50. Here's like 3, 4, 5 options. And these are kind of the top 2 for me. And other times I'm like, it is so obvious what you should do. 100% raise your, or 98%. This is what I would do. And so I let people run with it.
How do you screen your potential startup investments to ensure the coachability? Like, are you having them tell you their Colby scores? Are you giving them personality assessments to take beforehand? Some sort of interview process? You got some trick questions in there. What do you do?
Trick questions. That's funny. How would you move Mount Fuji? I ask everyone. No, with nothing but a shovel and a wheelbarrow. No, we do. So we fund in batches of about 25 companies at a time. So we do an application. It's like Y Combinator, folks have heard it. We're an accelerator called Tiny Seeds for B2B SaaS. And so we get hundreds of applicants over the course of 2 weeks. And then we whittle it down just based on the application. And then we do, I think between my team does 70 or 80 of those, an in-person, a Zoom interview. And then about half of those make it down to my co-founder and I. And so we ask, there's no trick questions. Usually it's, I'm asking you questions about your business. Oh, so I don't understand this part. Why is your churn's higher than I think it should be? Why is that? I ask them very tactfully, but I ask hard questions. Your growth, I'm guessing you would prefer to be growing faster. What's keeping it? You know what I mean? So I could say your growth sucks. This is a business. Or I could say you'd prefer to be growing faster. Tell me why that is, right? So I get them to tell. You can tell a lot about someone by how they answer these questions. If someone takes offense at my tactful, phrasing of, hey, I think your churn's a little high. Why is that? You start to pick up, this person has a little thin skin. I wonder if this person will take advice. Oftentimes towards the end of a call, there's usually something about the business that either my co-founder or I feels off, because we've seen so many. I mean, we've thousands and thousands of applicants. Again, hundreds and hundreds of interviews. There's patterns that you see. And so oftentimes it's like their pricing, there's something off with the pricing. There's something off with the marketing. Their H1, their headline on their website is like, I don't know what you do. It just took you 4 minutes to explain. Like, I know B2B SaaS. I'm one in the world. I'm one of the top, 50, 100, I don't know. There's not that many people who know it as much as I do. And it took you 5 minutes to explain what you do. That's a problem, right? So then we'll bounce back and forth and I'll say, hey, let's workshop something. That shows you coachability. Like, are they willing to have that conversation, or are they defensive? Are they like, no, this headline works. You don't understand. Or my pricing's really good. You don't understand. It's like, all right, it's a signal. Yeah. So that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
That's cool. So you were joking about the trick questions and the riddles and all that. I'll share one with you. That's I learned. I'll give credit to Sam Zertag for sharing this with me. I love it. I use this one in interviews for job applicants. So if a job applicant's listening to this interview, now they know the secret sauce for this particular question. I'll tell you what this test is called afterwards because it'll give it away. So you'd ask essentially, what are some of the attributes that you think are most, or actually, what's the one most important attribute that you think is going to put you in a leadership position, or to help your company to succeed, or if it's a job applicant, that's like the most important aspect or attribute for this particular position. Here are the 5 attributes. And these can be like, you can put whatever in here. So I'll just make some up. Creativity, technical acumen, attention to detail, honesty, and dedication. Which of those 5, pick one that is most crucial for you?
Can we say startup founder success or something?
Yeah.
Just
or for your market, or for your business, or for this position, right?
There's no one. There isn't one, because any of them taken to either extreme is a weakness, right? It's like dedication. Not having any means you're going to just flitter away and not stick with anything. Too much dedication means you're going to perseverate and work on the wrong things for too long when you should cut bait. So I will accept the premise of the question and answer it in a second, but that's the real answer. Okay. Is there is no one thing. Yep.
Okay. So if you have to pick one, which one are you going to pick, Rob?
Dedication.
Okay. So this question is called the honesty test. So if anyone answers the question with anything but honesty, they just failed the test. Because you can't coach or teach somebody honesty. That is an ingrained value or attribute. They can learn to be more attentive to detail. They can learn to be more creative. Like, you can take workshops. You can send them to improv classes. You can't send them to honesty classes. I don't want to have to watch their screen while they're working. I don't want to have to worry that they're cutting corners in ways that's out of integrity. So that's why I love this question, because it really gives me a sense of their character and how they answer it. So if they answer attention to detail because I'm hiring them for a VA position, then I know they're probably saying that because they think that I want to hear that, instead of saying, well, you know what, I grew up with this value of honesty. I don't cut corners. I don't lie. And so that's why I pick honesty. I'm like, yes.
Then, I view honesty as a prerequisite for everything, exactly. I guess. And that's where I say picking one, though, it's like a really honest founder. If I'm saying like, what is what is going to lead to startup success? Being really honest will not lead to, it is a fundamental thing that I want to invest in honest founders, but that's not a skill that will lead to success. So it's kind of a weird framing of it, but
yeah.
I totally.
Yeah. But for a position like hiring, let's say a VP or even an executive assistant or something, I would want that person to have honesty number one. Anyway, so that was just an example of a trick question. There are plenty of others, but that one I loved. Thought I'd share it with you. Yeah. So how do you follow your gut? Like how do you make this part of your process so that you don't get screwed over with a bad investment, or being snookered by one of your founders or whatever? Not that they would do that, but you rely on your gut a lot. Something feels off, you said earlier. So do you have a process or some sort of system? Do you have you documented, or can you articulate that intuition that you have?
It's a really good question, and it goes beyond just choosing investments and investing.
Yeah.
It is 80% of being an entrepreneur is making hard decisions with incomplete information. And in order to do that, you have to develop what I call the founder gut. It's just your instinct. The founders I see succeeding have pretty good instincts. Mm-hmm. And my instincts used to be crap. They were garbage in terms of what to work on. And I learned them over years of making mistakes and of being around people with better founder guts than I have. Mm-hmm. And so if you are I mean, if you're, so as a software developer, I didn't need a lot of gut feel because it's a left brain skill and I could write the code and the code worked and I didn't write bugs into my code. I realized that in order to be an entrepreneur, I needed to become a marketer. I had to learn marketing, and that was considered like a black art, among my friends. Oh no, you're reading marketing books, dark side, right? There was just this big joke because developers are going to say that. By the time I was a year or two into being a developer / marketer, I realized, I need to use a ton of gut feel in this because marketing is not. I still do it as a left brain. I track the numbers and all this, but it's not cut and dry. It's not an if then else statement. You know this. It's like my gut feel is that this approach will work, so I'm going to do that first, and it may not. And if it doesn't, I'll do the next experiment, and I'll give it. I'll be dedicated and persevere on it long enough, and then switch it up. So I think that alone, being a marketer and learning how to live with that uncertainty and to make hard decisions with incomplete information is like extremely, extremely valuable. That translates to me now as an entrepreneur. In every hiring decision I make, we just made a year-long projection and like, we're going to launch these products, this course, this effort. How did we get to that? I have a gut feel that it'll work. And if we look past, back to the last 20 years, enough of my things have worked. Not everything. I've shut things down. I've had failures, but enough of them. You don't need 90% of them to work. Like some of the best tennis players. I don't know if you've seen this. I think it was Pete Sampras was saying, I am one of the winningest tennis players of all time and thousands of matches. And I've won 80% of my matches or some crazy number. He said, you know how many individual points I won across all those games? 54% of the points he won. So how does it, the best Major League Baseball players in the world, right? They hit 300, 350, 400. Like it's not that much success. And as a startup founder or as a marketer, you don't need to be right even 90% of the time. There's some number that's higher than 50 and lower than 90, that if you have that many successes, you will have an incredibly successful, career. So that's how I view it is I make hard decisions with incomplete information based on my founder gut. And here's the other thing. I don't make them alone anymore. I always have people around me, whether it's mastermind or co-founder or advisors, whatever, to help that I trust that are also smart and have good gut to kind of navigate it. It's like, you're most of the way there with this thinking, but boy, the name is off. The price, sure, the pricing, you want to position it that way. Someone else can check my stuff. So to answer your original question of how do we evaluate founders, we do have like we have an SOP operating procedure. There are at least 3 of us talk to any given founder. And we do have, I call them yellow flags. There are yellow flags and there are red flags, and over time, it's like anything, putting in reps. The repetition is what helps you learn and helps you train your brain to recognize when things feel off. And then we have due diligence. We have legal due diligence. We check all their, you know what I mean? So there's like safeguards in place. Law of large numbers implies we have probably already been completely scammed and we just don't know it yet because we've invested in, that's it. 100, we're almost at 200 companies. Someone has to have totally taken our money and screwed us. And I guess we'll find out at some point, but that is where we're making a lot of bets. And this is what I tell people is you may not be able to invest in 200 startups, but you doing a lot of things quickly at high quality is you making a lot of bets. So if I'm a marketer, I want to be trying 2 things at the same time, maybe 3. One of them might work out as long as I can focus. If I am an entrepreneur within my business, I'm not saying you should launch 5 businesses because that doesn't work, but within that business, am I shipping stuff every day that allows me, hey, as long as most of these work, I'm going to move forward. That's really how I view it.
Yeah. It's a series of bets, but it's also, I think, tuning into that universal Google, the infinite intelligence. Do you have a sense of that, or you just the gut is just a feeling? I'm curious how that lands for you.
The gut is a feeling, and it develops over time as you make more hard decisions. I remember making hard decisions in my, let's say 20 years ago, and I just had no idea. I didn't even know how to think about it. Mm-hmm. And these days, founders come to me. Half of my job is an entrepreneur coming to me and saying, I'm at a crossroads and there's a really difficult decision that I have to get mostly right. I'm going to completely revamp my pricing. I'm going to make an executive hire. I'm going to fire part of my team. I'm going to make a huge investment in marketing. Like, how do I think about this? And usually now I have a thought process. It's like, well, let's just walk through all the options. Let's brainstorm them, write them all down, and then talk about the different avenues and the different kind of approaches you could do. And let's talk about the upside and the downside. Everything has downside if it doesn't work. What I want with almost any decision I'm doing, I want asymmetric upside, meaning I want that upside to be 10x, 100x what the downside is. And that goes from, I don't know, investing in startups, but it also goes with like, if this marketing approach works, you're a multi-million-dollar business in the next 2 years. So this is worth investing XYZ. And if it doesn't work, you're only out $50,000, only in quotes, but like, that's what you're out, in 6 months of your life. Yeah. So that's it, right? It's a thought process of being pretty like pragmatic and trying to, I think a big mistake folks do is they don't get creative enough in that original brainstorming. If you have a big decision to make, I used to falsely dichotomize everything. Well, it's this or that. I can only do these two things. I can either start it or not. And that's usually not the case. Usually there are like 5 or 6 solutions or ideas if you get very creative with it.
Yeah. I remember Tony Robbins saying this. I'm going to paraphrase, but if there are only 2 choices, that's a dilemma. That's not choices, that's a dilemma. And there are no dilemmas. There's always more than 2 choices. So that's a rough paraphrase, but I like that way of thinking and framing things. And you mentioned the word bets earlier. So I have a feeling that you like this book, Thinking in Bets, Making Smarter Decisions When You Don't Have All the Facts.
Annie Duke.
Yeah.
It's a good book. I think that's her best book, actually.
For somebody who's not familiar with the book, what's the premise and what's the punchline or the biggest takeaway from that book?
Oh boy. I mean, the premise is that everything in life can be thought of as a bet. She's a professional poker player, like super successful, right? And there's always this mix of numbers, mathematics, and how to evaluate hard decisions with incomplete information. That's a perfect example of it, right? Is poker. I'm going to be honest. I haven't read that book in 15 years. I don't remember. What is a big takeaway? Enlighten us.
I don't know. I haven't read it, but I've heard of the book, and I just knew when you were talking about bets that that book must be important to you, or the premise or the idea of thinking in terms of bets is something that you frame your decision making around. That was my bet. that was my guess, my intuition. So that's why I brought it up.
I should probably read that again because
it only came out in I think 2018, so it's not that old.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. It's only 5 years. All right. I read Quit, which was her most recent one.
Okay.
Which was fine.
Yeah. What was the big takeaway from that?
The big takeaway there was that quitting, that kind of our society or just the world at large makes quitting into a bad thing. Mm. And she was talking about how as a poker player, you have to quit, meaning fold like most of the time. You just don't, if you don't have a good hand, then quit. And so she talks through a bunch of examples of like when it was the right decision to actually quit. She goes from startups to big businesses to, whatever. And the thing that I remember, I mean, realistically, the book could have been like a podcast episode is how it felt to me. I listened to on audio, but it was one of those where it was like, but I love that idea of quitting isn't bad. And then the other aspect of it was to have kill criteria. Mm. She's like, kill criteria, it has a criteria and a date, or it has maybe a goal and a date. I forget exactly what she calls it, but it's like, if I don't have X amount of revenue by this date, I'm going to shut the startup down, or I'm going to stop that marketing approach, or I'm going to stop this effort, and get pretty concrete with it. She said, you can change that later. If you get close to it and you realize, you know what, stuff's just starting to work, and I think this has asymmetric upside and will work over the next couple of months, you can always adjust it, but not enough people think that way is what she was talking about. So I thought it was, that was a good one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a somewhat similar lesson or learning from one of my very earliest clients from like 1995, 96, when I started my agency. And it was the PDMA, Product Development and Management Association. And the lesson or the kind of catchphrase was, product development is not a tunnel, but a funnel. And I just thought that was genius, because if you're 90% of the way down the track with a product that you're creating, you probably want to finish it, right? But if the market is telling you it doesn't want it anymore, or you have new intel that tells you that this is not going to go well because of a new competitor or some new, something, you kill it, even though you're almost done. So it's not a tunnel. Just because it entered the tunnel, it was a good enough idea to start the product development process, doesn't mean it should go all the way to completion. And I love that.
I think that's really helpful. I think there are personalities that I see that start efforts. I'll say companies, but it can be anything. And there are some folks who at one extreme, they just quit when it gets hard. Oh, I've been doing this for a week and I'm not a millionaire. I need to jump to the next idea. I'm going to launch 20 startups and see. And it's like, come on, like, no, get it together. On the other extreme, there are folks who will work on the same thing, grinding for 6 years, nights and weekends with like very little traction. It's like, okay, we need a balance. We need some kill criteria here. That's where I think it's helpful, is either extreme is not helpful, but a lot of people are like, well, how do I know when to quit? How do I know when to quit? And it's like, well, you're never going to know. It's a hard decision, usually a permanent decision with incomplete information. You're never going to know, but you're going to have some data. And take that data to your founder gut. Take that data to the people around you who are smart. Take that data to, sit with the decision. This is often what I do. I've had to kill a couple things in the past couple of years, efforts that we were doing. And it took me several months to kind of get comfortable, to say, like, I think we're going to stop doing these local events we were doing, but I'm not comfortable with that today. And I'm going to just feel it and kind of, I'm going to hold that for a few months and kind of gather more data as I have conversations, gather more data as we run more of these events. Like, are these really worth it? The effort, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time I was 2-3 months in, I was like, we got to stop doing these. Like I became convinced of that, and sometimes you do that and you become less convinced of, like, yeah, I was off. Like we were going to rebrand. We have 2 brands. We were going to combine them at one point. And that was a big decision. And I said, I think we need to combine these. And then over the course of like the next 4 or 5 months, it became obvious we should not. And so that's where you have to kind of listen. I don't know. You said universal intelligence or something. There's a universe out there. And there's also, founder gut, I think, that weighs in.
Yeah. Cool. I'm curious if you buy into the Kolbe assessment process, because having kill criteria also presumes that somebody is able to enter and start something. And one of the Kolbe score or criteria is being a quick start. And then you get a number associated with quick start. I'm a 9 quick start, which means I have a lot of things that I start. And I'm low in follow through. So I need my team to kind of follow me and clean up the mess. So, yeah. And it's great to know about all the team members that you work with, and even your intimate partner and your kids and your parents and everything. It's really cool. So, are you familiar with the Kolbe assessment? KOLBE?
Yeah, I believe, I was just trying to look to see if I have my PDF, but I believe I've taken it, but I don't remember it. I love personality tests like that for just learning about myself. Yeah. So StrengthsFinder, Kolbe, Enneagram, even Myers-Briggs is a little less, but I've taken all of them. And for me, I love reading through and saying, like, wow, that has me dead to rights. And then other ones, it's like, I think this one's a little off, but it's, we don't give them to our employees. I'm not like super invested in it, but I definitely like and appreciate them. And I like what it has helped me realize, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And to your point, how do you have a team around you, whether they work for you or, again, advisors, mastermind, who's supportive spouse? How do you have that team around you that can support you? And how do you know it's fine to have weaknesses. It's much, much more detrimental to have blind spots. And a blind spot is just a weakness that you don't admit or are unaware of. That's the problem. I can tell you 3 weaknesses that I have right now. And that's great, because when I go to make decisions or do things, or I feel that resistance because I'm like, this is you, this is your personality pulling away from blah, blah, right? I can have this inner self-talk of like, make the right decision, not the decision that feels comfortable. But if it's a blind spot, it's a weakness I don't know is there, I'm screwed. I will continue to make poor decisions over and over and over because I haven't raise those to the top. I believe more in strengths. Like I play to my strengths. I don't try to improve my weaknesses necessarily, but I want to know what my weaknesses are such that they aren't blind spots.
Yeah, that's great advice. And also really astute observation or point about weaknesses versus blind spots. I love that. I'm curious what your Enneagram type is.
My top is a 3, which is the achiever, which totally sounds accurate. My second one is a type 6, the loyalist, which absolutely describes me. I have very few deep relationships, and those relationships are deep and they're lifelong. Mm-hmm. So, and then I'm a peacemaker. I'm a 9. That's my third.
And so how do you apply that or use this in your life to, make things better?
Well, I know that I'll tell you what, it's not a blind spot, but it's a weakness of I am too loyal. And I can, imagine, let's hypothetical situation that I have someone I've worked with for 5 or 10 years, and they are really underperforming or really mismanaging things. I've real tough time admitting to myself, like, this person needs to go because of it's like, well, they've been loyal to me, so I should be loyal to them. And that's not always the best course of action for you or your business or even for that person. Yeah. That's the thing that I've had to convince myself is like, you're doing them a disservice, keeping them around at a job that they're not doing well at, right? So I'll say the opposite or that's where the loyalist is weak.
By the way, that the adage, the old adage of hire slow, fire fast, I think is really true.
Oh yeah. Big time. Yeah. The achiever in me, the non-shadow. So the shadow side of that is that some people achieve to the detriment of everyone around them, right? They burn reputation, and this and that, but see, I'm a loyalist. So achiever with loyalist means I value humans, I value relationships, and I want to get a bunch of stuff done. So the achiever, I think, is without that, I don't think that I build 6 companies. I don't think that I start a venture fund. I don't think that I just finished my 5th book, actually. None of that happens without the achiever. Like it makes me who I am today. And I don't achieve, it's not achievement for achievement's sake, but maybe a little bit of it is at this point.
That's cool. It's so good to know who you are and how you're wired so that you don't go against the grain or try to swim upstream, and you just get into your unique ability, get into the flow, doing the things that you're really good at. Yeah, really good.
Zone of genius.
Yep. Zone of genius. Yeah. So you mentioned Myers-Briggs maybe a little bit too. Do you remember what your Myers-Briggs is?
Yes. It used to be E. Now I'm an I. I switched at a certain point. So I'm ISTJ.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah, that means it's all that. Every engineer is like an ISTJ. Isn't that right? Maybe the sensing. I think that's it. It's like very left brain because the thinking and judging for sure.
So I'm an INFP, so I'm almost completely the opposite of you. INFP is known as the healer, which resonates for me.
My wife is that. We are polar opposites in that respect, and she's very intuitive. And that's when we work together. We just co-authored a book about selling companies from the psychology and the mental side of it, of how difficult it is. Our work styles, collaboration style is so different because I am very much like left brain, achieve, like get into it, hammer it out. And she's more intuitive with it, but man, she's just so good at it. And our collaborations are just 5 times better than I could do on my own because she brings, the whole other view to it. As long as, sometimes you conflict with the opposites, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can figure out how to like realize, there's like huge benefits to the, the other personality types and kind of integrate them. Yeah, there's a lot of benefit there.
Yeah, it's a great compliment. She's a compliment to you, and it's a compliment to her what you're saying about her, that she actually makes you better or brings out your best and gives you an awesome kind of superpower and additional perspective and ability that she brings to the table. Yeah. Good stuff. Also, you mentioned StrengthsFinder. I'm a fan of StrengthsFinder. Do you remember your top strengths? See, I could rattle them all off. I'm futuristic, input, strategic, learner, and ideation.
You and I have 2. I'm a futuristic, learner, focus, maximizer, and achiever. Which sounds right.
Yeah, cool. So how do you apply that learning to, or that kind of insight into your daily life and into the decisions that you make?
Yeah, see, the interesting thing is for me, I internalized, the reason I don't remember the numbers and the names and all that is because I internalized this stuff. StrengthsFinder probably 15, 20 years ago. I remember reading it on a commute when I still had a day job. And I realized, oh, I do live in the future, like futuristic as I live in the future. And I say that phrase all the time. I didn't even realize I got it from here, but it's probably 3 times a week. I use that phrase with my therapist, with my wife, with someone else, of like, I'm thinking about the future all the time. And I realized that is a gift. There's a reason I started saving for retirement the day that I graduated from college when I was 22. I started putting money away. And guess what? That has served me really well, but it's also detrimental.
Yeah.
Can you live in the moment? Can you experience the present moment without always be thinking about the future, whether daydreaming about it or thinking this is going to go wrong in the future? This could go wrong in the future, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't even realize I had it. And Learner is just, oh yeah, I've been doing that my whole life. I taught myself how to program. I taught myself how to be an entrepreneur. I taught myself how to market.
I taught myself BASIC and assembly language as a little kid. I was coding in hexadecimal before the internet was a thing back in the 80s. I was teaching myself how to write a bulletin board system, a BBS, from scratch. And I did. I ran it from my home phone line.
That's a learner for you. That was back when the information was so hard to get. I Speak Basic to My Apple is the book that I got, and I had an Apple IIe, and I learned BASIC from that. So yeah. It's funny, achievers on both these, right? On the Enneagram and here, which makes sense. It's like I start companies and I write books and I do all that. So it's just like what do you call it? It's a reinforcing of like, I read that list. I'm like, maximize our focus. Yeah, sounds about like me.
Yeah. Well, there's one assessment I would recommend you add to your arsenal, and it's the DeMartini Values Determination. It's free. You go to drdemartini.com. Dr. John DeMartini, he was in the movie The Secret. He's a polymath. He's brilliant. He's amazing and really inspiring, a personal development expert and so forth, kind of like Tony Robbins, but not so rah-rah. It's really inspiring to hear him. He's been on my podcast multiple times. He's been on this show. He's been on my personal development show on Get Yourself Optimized. So if you go through the values determination process, you'll get your hierarchy of values, and then you can see how they stack up with your job duties and how you spend your time, and your team, when they take the assessment, how that aligns their job duties, their responsibilities with their highest values. And if there's a mismatch there, then you got to move their job function around or what they're doing during the day so that it matches. Otherwise, you're going to lose them.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've just added it to my Trello board.
Okay. So I know we're running short on time. So I want to talk a little bit about the SaaS Launchpad, because you just launched that and you utilized AI to help create this whole course. And what you did with the Launchpad versus what you would have done by hand manually back in the day when you were creating courses without AI, like, it's night and day difference, right?
Yeah. Oh, big time. We probably saved ourselves, I don't know if it's 100 hours, but it's some approximation of that, 50 hours, 100 hours. So the course I outlined from all my experience, my knowledge, whatever, all the stuff I do, and recorded it all traditional, no AI involved, had editors, hand editing, did all that. Where we started thinking about AI was, there's 28 videos in the course. It's like, a course isn't just videos. A course needs worksheets, quizzes, checklists, augmenting material, secondary material, supplemental, you might say. And we realized, let's just run one of these videos through Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to create, hey, what is a checklist based on this? And what is a summary? And what is a quiz? What are some questions that you would want to ask? Shockingly good, shockingly competent. And it takes 2 minutes, and it's way better than really I would have spent time to do myself. And I did. The last course I launched was like 14 years ago, I think. And I created all of this by hand, and it was just dozens and dozens of hours to produce material that was fine. It was fine, but this is like really high quality stuff. So I continue. I don't use AI in my day-to-day workflow truly, but it's stuff like that and brainstorming, because I'm writing a book every 18 months-ish right now. Even just coming up with book titles is hard. And
Yeah.
I instantly go to Chat GPT and I ask it, what book, here's the book, here's the text of the book, or here's the idea of it. Here's some titles I have in mind, help me. And we just go back and forth and back, and then subtitles, and then, jacket copy, like all that. It at least gets me started.
And do you use the AI tools for also the promotion and the planning for launches and things like that, for the course, for the books that you write, et cetera? Or is it just really for the production?
Just for production at this point. Yeah, we have launched so many things that we have really nice project plans for all that. I'm doing my second Kickstarter here in a month for the next book called Exit Strategy. That I wrote with my wife, and it's my second Kickstarter, and we know what went well and what didn't last time. And so, yeah, we have it all dialed in, I think.
So how did you learn what to do and what not to do with a Kickstarter campaign?
We were going to hire a consultant, and we talked to a bunch of them, and none of them seemed to fully understand what we were doing. We have a massive audience, and they kept saying, well, we're going to run all these ads. And it's like, we don't need ads. And then they were like, I'm going to take 10% of your Kickstarter. And it's like, we're going to raise six figures based on our existing audience. We're going to send an email, put a YouTube video, do a podcast. We have owned media. I'm not giving you 10% of that. That's insane. Like, you know what I mean? Because you're not earning anything. You're just giving advice. So I really struggled with the Kickstarter consultants. We eventually we talked to 3 people who had run successful Kickstarters. A good friend of mine runs a board game company and runs a Kickstarter like every 60 days. Just got advice. And the more we pulled it in and started writing out, hey, this is what we're going to do, it became obvious it just wasn't rocket science. It's just another launch. There's some nuances. You want to start on this day, end on this day. 40% comes on the first 2 days and the last 2 days. All the stuff that you kind of know, but there's some tricks and tips, but there was nothing magic about it if you've launched things before. And I've launched I've launched companies, I've launched events, I've launched books. And so it just it was like, okay, it's a twist on a launch.
That's cool. So did some sort of synchronicity or intuition come to you that told you, hey, do this as a Kickstarter instead of a traditional book launch? Because that's unusual to do a book launch as a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, there's only been a few. Usually there's some fiction authors that do book launches, but the only other successful nonfiction book I know is Eric Ries did something, I think it was called The Startup Way, or maybe, I don't remember what it was, but he's the only other one. The reason I wanted to do it was I've launched a ton of stuff over the past 20 years, and I've always done it with a landing page and an email. So, traditional internet marketing launch. The Kickstarter was a new thing, and I'm a learner, and I wanted to learn what that was like. I've also backed 300 projects on Kickstarter myself. I just love Kickstarter. So I wanted to see what it was like on the other side. I also wanted to do 2 launches. This allows me to go to Kickstarter, do a whole launch, raise the kerfuffle, get the backers, print hardcover books, which I've never done because you need a big order, print those. And then 3 months later, those get here and I get to launch all over again. That was super fun last time. So it was a risk. I didn't know if it would work. And it's certainly a public failure if you don't make it. It looks it's bad, right? But we did good. We did $108,000 selling a book. I mean, it was, in 20 days or something. So I was pretty happy with it.
That's cool. Good for you.
And I enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's fun. All right. Well, I know we're at time. So if our listener wants to follow you, learn from you, sign up for your course, maybe even get investment from you, become part of your Tiny Seed, how do they get in touch? How do they follow you and all that?
Yeah. Well, if they listen to podcasts, they can go to startupsfortherestofus.com or just search for that title in any podcatcher or on YouTube. If they are looking if they're SaaS founder, they can go to tinyseed.com. That's the investment fund and accelerator we run. And if they want to learn about my books, again, I've written 4, just finished the 5th. It hasn't launched yet. They can go to robwalling.com. It's just my full name, and get on the email list or just poke around there. I have a free book. One of my books I give away for free. It's called Start Marketing the Day You Start Coding. And so if you enter your email there, you can just download the book for free.
That's awesome. Well, very, very generous of you. Okay. Well, thank you, Rob, for a fun and enlightening and inspiring episode. And thank you, listener, for listening and being part of the community. We'll catch you on the next episode. Have a great week. This is Stephan Spencer, your host, signing off.